A lot of times we make lists, and the reason why I forget it, I'll start a to-do list, let's say, and I'll put all sorts of things in there, and then I close the app, and I don't open the app again, and so I forget it.
Yeah.
Until I accidentally open the app, and I'm like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do those things, right?
Panic comes.
Yeah.
So.
When you talk about listening with care, and I remember just that little angst about, okay, I'm going to listen to what this person's saying to me, but in the back of my mind, there's this, well, then I'm going to have to help them solve their problem.
Yeah.
And so sometimes listening means this is going to cost me something. But I have learned that a lot of times people just want to talk. They just want to share. They want somebody that does care about what they're going through.
The pressure. It is high pressure. You can't see this off camera, but the other Josh is just staring us down right now, putting all sorts of pressure on us to be professional, to not laugh or joke around.
It's so stressful.
And he doesn't have a mic this week, so he can't defend himself. It's just wonderful. Hey, welcome to Deep Dive. I'm so glad you chose to join us. I'm Kirk, I'm your host, and with me today are Bob and Josh, and we are talking about the Bless practices.
Yes.
We're going to talk about what it means, some of our challenges, some of our joys, and maybe even we'll talk about sharing our story a little bit. All that today on this episode. Hey, Bob. Hey, Josh. Welcome to today's episode of Deep Dive.
Here we
are. We're talking about the blessed practices. And we've been kind of off air for a little while. Our good friend Josh Johnson, because there's two Joshes in the room, and one more Josh, and we'd have a full house. But we've got two Joshes in the room.
That was good.
That was good. You like that?
It's just joshing around over here.
Josh has been covering us for the last few weeks with Deep Dive, doing some look back into our archives. And so today we're going to do a bit of a catch up on the blessed practices that we're in, the Everyday Rhythms series that we're in. And we're going to talk about all 5 practices all at once. We're missing Lisa. That's the only person we're missing, but she'll be on in a future episode to talk about what the blessed practices look like in her life. But I thought I'd start with you guys and just kind of ask you about the blessed practices. So you've been exposed to this for about a year since we started talking about the blessed practices as a staff team. So, tell me, how do you kind of keep yourself on track with these blessed practices?
Go ahead, Josh.
the double nod. Man, it's been hard at times.
Yeah.
Because it's creating new rhythms a little bit, right? Like the hope is to build these everyday rhythms, but to create new rhythms, you got to change old rhythms, right? And so, particularly like just sitting through this list, this bless 5 of who are these people that Jesus is calling us to bless, and how that list even shifted a little bit as we started as a staff team, like you said, around a year ago, and engage with some of it, and then coming to the series, that list adapted for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did it change?
Just a couple names. So two of the names changed.
Was I on that list?
Never. Neither iteration.
Neither iteration. Well,
in part,
I'm sad, but at the same time relieved.
Yes, right? I mean, man, you would be thrilled to be blessed by me. But in part, because the list, right, is those that are close to us but far from God.
That's right.
And so my perception is that you're not far from God. So
thank you for that. And to everyone listening, that is true.
Yeah, that's good.
I put Jesus first in everything.
Totally. And so, it was actually, I think, a proximity thing where one of the names shifted, in particular, where just the proximity to one person wasn't the same as it had been. And another kind of popped back into my life. So particularly the begin with prayer rhythm, though, of just making sure I'm praying for these people on like a regular everyday basis. That's been the challenge, I think. Because I've had these practices and rhythms of here's what my prayer life looks like in a given week, and so it's challenging, but in good ways.
Yeah, I think that adaptation is key, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, like in upcoming sermon, we're going to talk about our person of peace. And one of the principles of the person of peace is that they give us presence in their life.
Yeah.
And that presence can be passing or it can be permanent.
Totally.
And so that's where that list, we always need to come back to it, right? A lot of times we make a list, at least I'm guilty of this. I make a prayer list or I make a list in general and I forget it was there. And so coming back to it again and again and saying, okay, who are the people of peace, Jesus, that you want me to be focusing on this season in life?
Yeah.
And I know a year ago when we were doing this, at the time I was praying for this one guy, Jay, and but then that was a passing person of peace.
Yeah.
And so we moved to another place, and now I have new people, and that I pray for regularly in the midst of that. So that's a great tip on coming back and just kind of saying, who are the people? Who are my blessed five?
Yeah.
That's
totally.
awesome.
Yeah.
How about you, Bob? How do you keep yourself on track?
Well, just like Josh is talking about in the regular practice of devotional time. And one of the things that I've kind of started to do that's been neat, I actually started it last summer, is when I do my personal devotions on the back deck, I have three neighbors, one beside me, one on each other side. And so I remember to be praying for those guys. And then the other thing that I have to do every once in a while is walk around the yard and throw their toys back over on their side of the fence. They all have kids now, so it's kind of fun. And then when I walk out the front door, I'm looking across the street at the neighbors over there and the neighbors beside. And so especially when we're heading off on a work day, it's the first thing before we head off, come outside, look around, say, okay, Lord. And then and to pray for them by name, because then that helps you to remember the names of the neighbors around you.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That visual reminder,
Yeah.
I think is a key thing, right? A lot of times we make lists, and the reason why I forget it, I'll start a to-do list, let's say, and I'll put all sorts of things in there, and then I close the app, and I don't open the app again, and so I forget it.
Yeah.
Until I accidentally open the app, and I'm like, oh yeah, I was supposed to do those things, right?
Panic comes.
Yeah.
And when it comes to these blessed five, having those visual reminders, whether it's the houses around you, for me in my journal, I have like 5 circles at the top of each page that I color in to say, hey, yeah, I began with prayer, or hey, I ate with somebody today. But having that list somewhere, whether it's on your sun visor in your car or sitting on your desk next to your laptop or whatever, is just a great way to do it. When we work out, right? We get, if you have an Apple Watch, you're always obsessed with closing the rings, right? And so the same sort of principle applies. That's why I use those circles in my journal as a visual reminder to remind myself every morning when I'm doing my devotions that I have to have that. And there's different ways to do it. So those are some great tips. Because it is something that easily falls off the map, right? The enemy would now love nothing more than to see us forget about our blessed five.
Yeah.
But when we begin to lean into it, we see something happen.
Yeah,
Spirit
exactly.
leads.
There's these little mental games we have to play with ourselves and little reward systems.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
That's what it is.
And they say it takes 21 days to build a habit, right? Probably longer for me because I'm just a slow learner.
Same.
But, like I remember buying this habit tracker and I got to color those in every day if I'm actually going to create a new and healthy habit. And that's what these everyday rhythms are all about, is about learning to have a healthy habit that actually is partnering and engaging with the mission of God. All right. Well, let's talk about the first 2 letters, which are...
Bless.
That was a good start. Bob,
Thanks,
Bob, what's the B?
What's the B, Bob?
B is the... and then I just went blank.
Begin with prayer.
Begin with prayer.
Bob got it.
You can think about the L.
They always listen.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Crushing it.
what is the pressure? It is high pressure. You can't see this off camera, but the other Josh is just staring us down right now, putting all sorts of pressure on us to be professional, to not laugh or joke around.
It's so
And
stressful.
he doesn't have a mic this week, so he can't defend himself. It's just wonderful.
That's intimidating.
So I'll go back and watch the sermons again from the start just to...
There we go. Begin with prayer, listen with care. This is the B and the L in our blessed practices. So what does it look like to begin with prayer and listen with care in your life? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
I love the begin with prayer, because that's my morning habit, is to get up in the morning and take my cup of coffee. I've got my little routine: make my coffee, turn the lamp on, pull up my journal, set it up. By that time, the pot's ready, pour the coffee, sit down. And then to begin in journaling. And one of those little mind games that I practice is keeping track of how many days in a row am I successful. And so I write little numbers beside each day as we're going along, and I reach for like, okay, I'm going to try and get 100 days in a row, 200 days in a row. I think the most I ever did was like 1,300 days in a row.
Wow.
And I missed a day and I went like, oh no.
Wow.
But
That's a lot of days in a row.
what I love is that time in the morning where nobody's up, nobody's distracting, nothing's going on, and it's just that quiet time of listening and reflecting. Because I remember in the earlier days trying to do my devotional times when things are rushed and you're running around and you got to get to work on those things, and you can't rush devotional. You can't rush the Lord when He wants to talk to you. You got to just sit back and give it that time space.
Yeah, that's very true. It's like any relationship, right?
Yeah.
You cannot rush a conversation.
Yeah.
You have to let it flow. And that's true with God. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, living out that same morning discipline is that it's ebbs and flows of
Especially because you have young kids.
Yeah.
Right?
So my kids' sleep schedules of
Bob's throwing toys back at
yeah,
people.
right.
You're like trying to deal with toys underneath your feet that are yours.
Yeah, right. And so they're crushing it right now and sleeping good, which is awesome and helps. So, but yeah, like the listen with care piece in those devotional times has been writing out either one or two of those names in those times to say, Jesus, what do you have for this person, right? What does it mean for me to bless them this week, today? And so, in times it's looked like a text message. In times it's been just a lot of like just listening on their behalf and quiet with the Lord. And then too lived like that proximity piece of listening with care when I do have actual moments with them, right? Listening to them and what's going on in their worlds and lives. And that's been significant, right? Like the discipline of listening, period, to God, to people is challenging because we at our core are selfish, right? And we're like, oh, I got the next thing. I got what's going on now. And it can be hard to just be present with people, but man, we need to be. And so it's been a gift just to listen well to people, to like these people in particular on my Blessed Five list. So
That's good. I've started to morph the begin with prayer one a little bit. Like there's the morning part where I have my journal and I sit down like you guys have been talking about, but I've started to use this begin with prayer now in the moment. So I shared this in one of the sermons that I preached on begin with prayer. I say one of them because I preach it twice on a Sunday morning and sometimes it's a little bit different in the second hour.
Totally.
And, but when I go for a haircut, I always go on my day off. And I don't necessarily want to talk to people on my day off, okay? Because I spend a lot of time during the week. Don't get me wrong. I love my job. I love people. But there are some times where I just need to recharge by just kind of, I'm an extrovert, but even extroverts need to recharge by being quiet from time to time. And so I will go to a haircut place and I'll go in there hoping that nobody will talk to me, which is really hard when you need to get your hair cut, right? But I've started now pulling up to the haircut place and I begin with prayer.
It's good.
And I just say, Holy Spirit, I'm available, right? It is my day off, but I am available to you and I'm available to whoever's there. And if you want me to listen to somebody, because sometimes we'll get in the chair and it's a short conversation, but then the person just starts talking to me about what's going on in their life. And it's Jesus, if you want me to listen with care to the person that's cutting my hair, I will do that. If you want me to engage in a conversation, last time I went to get my hair cut was a single mom and talking a little bit about life who was cutting my hair, right? And I just sat and listened. And, I didn't have a ton of wisdom for them, but I listened. And sometimes we just need to be heard. So that's part of how I've morphed it a little bit is when I'm pulling up to a store, whether I'm pulling up for my haircut, whether I'm pulling up to a restaurant even. It's like, sounds like those are all eating places. Whenever I'm pulling up to some place, let's just put it that way, I will begin with prayer and say, Jesus, I'm available for whatever you has for me. And so that's a way we can do it outside of the devotion time as well. So
when you talk about listening with care, and I remember just that little angst about okay, I'm going to listen to what this person's saying to me. But in the back of my mind, there's this, well, then I'm going to have to help them solve their problem.
Yeah.
And so sometimes listening means this is going to cost me something. But I have learned that a lot of times people just want to talk. They just want to share. They want somebody that does care about what they're going through or understand a little bit, and they're not looking for a solution. They're just looking for someone to listen to. And when I kind of made that adjustment in my mind that this may not cost me anything, or this may not require me to solve somebody else's problem, but they just want to share, they want to talk, they want to listen, somebody to listen to them, then it was easier to listen. And then when somebody did need help, well, then you could. But it isn't every time somebody's sharing their struggle that they're looking for you to solve it.
Yeah. This is probably one of the biggest skills that we need to learn today is the ability to listen.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when I'm doing premarital coaching for couples that deeply love each other, I mean, they're getting married, right? Within weeks, usually, of me talking with them. And this is one of the key things they need to learn is how to listen to each other, not how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Because they've probably done a lot of talking to each other, but actually listening to each other. And it's always amazing to see couples. All of a sudden, you'll see one of the people in the couple and their eyes will open because they've actually heard their future spouse for the first time. Or the other one is like, wow, you actually paid attention there. And too often we listen with the intent to respond. And this is really about just listening to somebody. And because when you listen, you care.
Yeah.
Right? When you listen, you love. And so that's what it's about. It's something we all need to learn about and do. So those are the first two letters. Let's move on to the second two letters, the fun ones, I like to call them. So Bob says we have 21 opportunities a day to eat together.
A day.
Did I really say that?
That is really
That's
what
wild.
you said.
I'm going to ask our audience to go back and review the footage.
Confirm.
I was there in both services because I thought the first one, he must have made a mistake because it's 21 times a week is really what we're talking about.
Yes.
But I listened in both services and it was 21 times a day.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times.
Well,
to
that is,
eat.
but they're small bites.
Yeah.
And
get
if
a
you
meal
keep
over
track
quick.
of that, yeah.
Lots of eating together.
I
if you do it that
remember
way.
one of the diets I went on when I was, wanting to kind of put things into shape and, eat all you want. Just don't swallow. So,
all right. So
anyway,
the first one
that's not
is
what we're here to talk
eat
about.
together.
Yeah.
No. And the second one is serve with love.
Yeah.
Right. And so what does this look like in your life? Do you have any stories you can share? Or what does this look like? How do you create space to do these things in your life? And what does it look like to eat together or to serve with love?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I love doing is, again, because I'm an early morning kind of guy, is I will meet people for breakfast. Quite often Tim Hortons, McDonald's, different place. I kind of like the St. Albert Inn because a lot of people don't use that place. They make a decent breakfast, but it's quiet. And but those are things using what's already available. My wife is, when it comes to hospitality, she is phenomenal. She's got a real gift to hospitality. She loves to have people over. And then when they do come over, for her, it's important to make them feel special. And so she does all these fancy little things to make them feel special. But I remember over the years how many times we've had people in our homes and made them feel like they matter. And so much of it is about building a bridge, about building relationships. And she's been just awesome at that. But when I'm working in the community during the week, I know that I get lunch times.
Yeah.
So what a great time to grab one of the people from the workplace where they're having the same break at the same time. Say, let's go have lunch together.
Because the key is doing something that you're already doing with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And so
everyday rhythms. I
that's
love
right.
that term.
So if you take lunch to work, it's just saying, hey, why don't you have lunch with me today? You don't have to buy the person lunch. You don't have to put on a big shindig. But you just, if you're going for coffee, just go for coffee, right? And, I remember when I worked downtown Calgary, that's often what I would do is just, hey, I'm going for lunch. You want to come?
Yeah.
There's I'm not paying for you, right? But let's go walking together, or let's just go for a walk around the block. Eating is just this metaphor for creating space in our life, right? And that's why we use that metaphor of coffee, getting a coffee.
Yeah.
How about
Well,
you,
I mean,
sir?
yeah, the getting a coffee, I think, is lived
You
in
actually
my
like
life.
coffee.
I do love coffee. And so that, like, just before filming this
You had
was
coffee.
I had coffee with somebody, right? At one of my Blessed Five.
Oh.
Because Mondays we had young adults in the evening.
Yeah.
So went and took a lunch break with my Blessed Five and said, hey, do you want to go grab a coffee? And
Cool.
it was just an opportunity to eat together, to listen with care. And starting weeks ago, at that beginning with prayer and living that out and saying, Jesus, what do you want to do with this? Right.
That's awesome.
And so the serving with love in this small window was, in this case, buying them coffee and
Yeah.
saying, hey, it's on me, man. Like I got it. And, just like a joy, just the simplicity of some of it.
Yeah, that's serving with love, finding people at the place of need, right?
Yeah.
Is one of the key things, because it's oftentimes we'll do things for other people,
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily land at the place where their deepest need is.
Yeah.
And I've always, when people have done stuff for me, the stuff that I remember the most is the stuff where it met a deep need. Like I remember once a guy found out that my wife's grandfather passed away and that I had to go to Regina the next day to do the funeral. And he called me up. He said, "What do you need?" I said, "Well, I'm having trouble with my minivan." And so he came over, he took my minivan. This is like a high earner kind of thing, high responsibility guy. And he stopped whatever he was doing that day and came over, picked up my minivan, took it to Canadian Tire, got it fixed up, brought it back. And I just was able to do all the prep that I had to do for what was going on. But this was a guy that I'm like, this is an executive. And I'm like, what is going on? And I remember that over a decade later.
Yeah.
Because when we serve with love, actually it impacts us in a way that is significant when you meet somebody at their deepest need.
Yeah.
So, well, that's great. So the last one, the last S, is share your story.
Yes.
So we showed some examples during that sermon of some stories. I shared my story in like 30 seconds to a minute, depending on which service you went to, because the first one was longer than the second one. Again, I do it different every single service.
Yeah.
So it's substantially the same, but there's little tweaks.
So everyone should come to both services
No,
and take full notes.
That's not what I'm
how do we
saying.
do that?
That's not what I'm saying.
No, just kidding. Jokes.
You don't need to hear that twice. But you guys, give your examples of your story.
Yeah.
Elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Length, right? Just like we talked about during the sermon. If you haven't watched it, go back. The other Josh will put it in the links, and you can go back and watch that sermon. So tell us your story of your encountering Jesus so that our friends can actually get an example that maybe will help them in crafting their story.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it lived this life in high school where I was far from God, didn't know him, would come to youth group and stuff, and landed in this place in my grade 12 year of, man, God, I'm going to choose myself over you because I want to live my life for myself. I want to do X, Y, Z, and etc. And my radical statement was, and I'll come back to you, Jesus, on my deathbed. And the next week, I got into a car accident with a train.
Oh, wow.
And got hit by a train. All this running through my mind, like right on the mark a week later. And just this, old Alliance language of a crisis moment of like, that could have been my deathbed, right? That could have been here and now. And just this choice there to say, Jesus, actually, I want to follow after you. And the speaking that and then beginning to make decisions to say, yeah, Jesus, I want to pursue the life to the full that you have for me.
Yeah.
Jesus began to transform my life in significant ways, and is continuing to transform my life to make me more and more like him. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Makes me want to ride another floor and ask you more questions.
Right.
But we'll go over here to Bob because we're running out of time on this podcast.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
So my story that I share is at an early age, our mother abandoned us. And so we found ourselves in a broken family, raised by my grandmother and an uncle. And then my father remarried. So we came from a broken family to a blended family. And it was in the blended family that we were introduced to things, drugs, alcohol, crime, violence, those kinds of things, which was then in that real shaping time of my life. And I remember in my late teens coming to a place where I just said, I don't want to live like this anymore. And watching the pain and the misery going on around us. And so at a point of suicide, just ready to end it all because I didn't want to live like that, felt God speak to the inside of me saying, if you want to end your life, why don't you do it my way? Totally surrender it to me and just see what I'll do with it. If you kill yourself now, you'll never experience what I could do. But if you will totally surrender your life to me as if you're dead and you have no rights and you just follow me, then we can see what I can do with your life. And if it doesn't work out, then you can always kill yourself later. So I remember that defining moment of hopelessness. But then at that moment where I said, okay, God, here's my life, then there was a sense of hope that started to fill me. And I thought it would get easy, but it didn't. It was tough. It was tough to walk with the Lord. It was tough to change some old habits and patterns. But the reward is remarkable. Yeah. And so identifying with people that coming from broken families, identifying with people that comes through families with drugs, alcohol, violence, crime, identifying with what it means to just have a sense of hopelessness. And then finding out where their story is. That's my story, yeah, but their story. And lots of times I've sat with people and says, tell me your story. Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Well, what's your life about? Yeah. And they love to talk about themselves. So
yeah. Hey, we all have a story to share.
Yeah.
And part of the S is just learning your story and the different themes. And you've heard some themes in Josh's and Bob's story. You heard some themes from mine. And whenever there is this crisis moment, to use the old language as Josh talked about, this moment where we have to choose to either put Christ first in everything or not, that's a moment of conversion. And that's a moment where you can share your story of what God is doing in your life. Yeah. Your story is meaningful. Your story has value. Your story can change lives. Yeah. And so that's why it's so important to learn your story and then share it. And we've got a website that Josh is going to put into the links that you can go to. And if you want to share your story with us, we'd love to hear it and make it part of what we have up on our website of your story of grace in our life. Because we'd love to have a website just filled with stories. Yeah. So that while you tell your story in person, we have a website where people can maybe discover your story and actually discover Jesus through your story. So you can fill that out. Well, hey guys, thanks for joining me. And we still got a couple more weeks in this sermon series as we talk about person of peace, as we talk about the power of hospitality, and then as we commission each other to go out and be blessings to the world. I hope you'll join in for those sermons and for those deep dive sessions. Until next time, take care.
Very good.
See ya.